All right, everybody, welcome back. Today we are going deep on something truly delicious, potato skins. You know those crispy, cheesy appetizers that always seem to disappear first?
It is funny how something so simple can actually be pretty complicated.
I know, right?
Yeah.
We've got a really in-depth guide here, and it breaks down how to make the absolute best potato skins. And it's a lot more than just throwing some potatoes in the oven.
Yeah, this guide is really interesting because it actually explains the reasons behind every step. It's not just like, here's a recipe. It's like, this is the science of how to make amazing potato skins.
Exactly. We all know that russet potatoes are like the best for potato skins, but have you ever thought about why?
It really comes down to the starch content. The starch is key because when it bakes and absorbs the heat and moisture, it like swells up and that creates that fluffy inside that we all love. And at the same time, the skin gets nice and crispy.
I used to just buy whatever potatoes were on sale, but after reading this guide, I am definitely a russet convert.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy how just knowing that little detail can make such a big difference in how the potato skins turn out.
Yeah, for sure. And another detail that a lot of people don't think about is piercing the potatoes before you bake them. You've probably done it before, but it's interesting to learn why it's so important.
It's almost like you're giving the potato a chance to breathe before you bake it.
Yeah.
Like those little holes let the steam escape so they don't explode in the oven.
That's exactly it. It's all about giving the steam a way to get out so the potatoes cook evenly and there's no like pressure building up inside.
Yeah, nobody wants their potato to explode.
Eh,
Okay, so we've talked about choosing the right potatoes and why we pierce them. What's next?
Well, Guy talks a lot about double baking the potatoes, and this is where it gets pretty interesting. It's not just throwing them in the oven once you actually have to bake them twice to get that perfect texture.
Double baked. I've never done that before. Tell me more.
So the first bake is really just to cook the potato all the way through. You're kind of pre-cooking it at a lower temperature. And then for the second bake, you turn up the heat to really focus on getting those skins super crispy.
So it's like a 1-2 punch of potato goodness.
Exactly. And the guide goes into a lot of detail about what temperature to use and what you should be looking for at each stage. But I think we can save the details about the actual baking for the next part of our deep dive.
You got it. I'm already taking notes. Okay, so now we've got our perfectly baked potato skins. Time for the fun part, the cheese.
Oh yeah, cheese. The best part of a potato skin. The guide recommends cheddar cheese because it's a classic, but it also says you should experiment with other cheeses too.
I used to only use cheddar cheese, but after reading this guide, I realized there are so many other options, like Gouda or Monterey Jack, or even pepper jack if you want a little spice.
And the guide actually gives some good suggestions about which cheese goes well with which toppings. It's like a cheese pairing guide for potato skins.
This is making me so hungry. We've talked about potatoes and baking and cheese. Now I'm ready to talk about toppings.
Hold on, there's one more thing we should mention before we get to the toppings presentation.
Oh, right. You can't just throw a pile of potato skins on a plate.
Exactly. The guide says it's important to make them look good. Arrange them on a nice platter with different dipping sauces and stuff. It makes them look way more appetizing.
Okay, I'm convinced. So we've got the potatoes and the baking and the cheese and even presentation figured out. Now, can we please talk about toppings?
Of course. We're going to explore all kinds of different toppings in the next part of our deep dive, from classic toppings to some more unusual ones.
This is going to be awesome. So everyone listening, get your notebooks ready and start thinking about your favorite potato skin toppings. We'll be back in a bit with part 2 of our potato skin deep dive, where we'll finally talk about how to top these crispy, cheesy masterpieces. Stay tuned. And we're back for more potato skin goodness. Last time we talked about all the basics, getting those perfect russet potatoes and piercing them in that double bake method.
And we left you hanging with the promise of all the cheesy toppings.
That's right. Okay, so before we go crazy with the toppings, we need to get those potato skins ready. And I know washing potatoes seems obvious, but the guide really stresses how important it is.
It's all about making sure the skins are super clean, get all the dirt and stuff off because we're going to be eating those skins, so they need to be nice and clean and flavorful.
Yeah, it's like giving the potatoes a little spa day before we bake them.
Exactly. And once they're all clean, it's time to pierce them. Now, you might think this is easy, but the guide actually has some good tips on why this step is so important.
I've always pierced my potatoes, but honestly, I never really thought about why. I just figured it kept them from exploding, which is a good enough reason for me.
Well, yeah, that's true. But the cool thing is that those little holes actually work like pressure valves, so the steam can escape while the potatoes are baking. And that not only keeps them from exploding, but it also helps them cook evenly.
So it's not just about safety. It's about making sure the potatoes cook perfectly.
Exactly. All right, so while we're talking about cooking, we need to preheat the oven to 400 degrees. That's the right temperature for the first bake when we're just trying to cook the potatoes all the way through.
So while the oven is heating up, we should get those potatoes ready for their sauna time, right?
Yep. The guide recommends putting a little bit of olive oil on the potatoes after you pierce them. It adds some flavor and also helps them get that nice golden brown color.
Oh yeah, olive oil, the magic ingredient. I love how it makes everything taste better and look better.
And don't forget to use a pastry brush to spread the olive oil evenly. You want to make sure every part of the potato skin gets coated.
Attention to detail is key. Okay, so our potatoes are washed and pierced and oiled up. What about seasoning? Should we keep it simple or get fancy?
The guide says to just use salt and pepper to keep things simple. Just enhance the natural potato flavor.
Salt and pepper, the classic combo. Always a good choice. Okay, so the potatoes are ready to go. They're washed and pierced and oiled and seasoned. Time for the first bake.
Right. So we're going to put those potatoes straight onto a baking sheet and bake them for like 50 to 60 minutes at 400 degrees. That should be enough time to cook them all the way through.
I know we all want to get to the scooping and filling part, but the guide says it's really important to let those potatoes cool down for a bit before we touch them.
Yeah, patience is key, especially when you're working with hot potatoes. Give them like 10 to 15 minutes to cool off so you don't burn your fingers.
Safety first. Plus, those potatoes are going to be super hot right out of the oven.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's best to let them cool down before you try to do anything fancy with a knife.
Okay, so the potatoes have had their sauna session, they've cooled down a bit, and now it's time for the big reveal. We're going to cut those potatoes open and see all that fluffy potato goodness.
Now we're going to turn those potatoes into little potato boats ready to be filled with all kinds of deliciousness. We're going to cut each potato in half lengthwise.
Potato boats. I love it. Okay, so we've got our boats ready to go. What's next?
Now comes the tricky part. We need to scoop out the potato flesh, but we got to be careful. We want to scoop out enough to make room for the toppings, but we don't want to take out too much and make the skins all flimsy.
So it's all about finding the right balance.
Right.
We need enough potato to make the skin sturdy, but we also need space for all the good stuff.
Exactly. The guide says you should leave about a 1/4 inch of potato along the inside of the skin. That should be enough to hold everything together.
It's like we're building the perfect potato skin structure, strong enough to hold all the toppings, but still with that crispy skin.
That's a great way to put it. And don't forget, you can save all that potato flesh that you scooped out. You can use it for other recipes.
Waste not one, right. I'm already thinking mashed potatoes, potato pancakes, maybe even some soup.
There you go. 2 recipes for the price of 1.
Yeah. Right.
All right, so we've scooped out the potato and we've got our potato skin shells ready to go. Time to crank up the heat and get those skins nice and crispy.
This is the best part. The second bake that turns those skins into crispy golden brown perfection. How hot should the oven be for this part?
Let's turn the oven up to 450 degrees for this final bake. That's the perfect temperature to get that irresistible crunch.
Wow, that's a lot hotter than the first bake. I can already hear those skins sizzling in the oven.
Exactly. And before we put them back in the oven, we need to give them another little brush of olive oil.
More olive oil. You're really serious about this.
It's important. This second layer of olive oil helps to make the skins extra crispy and gives them that beautiful golden brown color, and it adds even more flavor too.
It's all about layering those flavors. I'm starting to realize that making the perfect potato skin is like an art form.
I like that. Okay, so we're almost ready to move on to the most exciting part of this whole process, the toppings. But first, those skins need to spend a little more time in the oven.
Right, so we're going to brush those potato skins with olive oil, put them back on the baking sheet, and pop them in the oven at 450 degrees. How long should we bake them for?
The guide says to bake them for 10 to 15 minutes on each side, or until they look nice and crispy. But keep an eye on them because ovens can be different and you don't want to burn them.
Got it. So while those skins are busy getting crispy, I think it's time to finally talk about toppings.
I'm with you on that. Let's get creative and see what kind of delicious combinations we can come up with.
All right, potato skin fans, welcome back. By now, your kitchens should smell amazing because those potato skins should be fresh out of the oven, and we've got all those toppings ready to go.
Yeah, this is the best part. It's where we finally get to turn those potato skins into something really special.
I know, right? Okay, so we're already to pile on those toppings, but we got to start with the cheese.
The guide says cheddar cheese is a classic, and it's a good choice. Cheddar has that sharp, tangy flavor, and it melts really nicely.
But we learned that there are tons of other cheeses out there, too. What are some of your favorites? And how do they change things up?
I really like Gouda. It's a little bit sweet and nutty, and it goes well with pretty much any topping. Then there's Monterey Jack, which is super creamy and kind of mellow, so it's good if you want to balance out stronger flavors. And if you like things spicy, you got to try Pepper Jack. It adds a nice kick to the potato skins.
I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. It's crazy how the cheese can totally change the whole flavor of the potato skin. It's like when you're painting and you choose the background color, it sets the tone for the whole thing.
That's a great way to think about it. And speaking of adding layers, we can't forget about the bacon.
Bacon, I mean, is there anything better? It's salty and smoky and crispy. It just makes everything taste amazing.
The guide says to crumble the bacon and sprinkle it over the cheese, and I think that's the best way to do it. You get little bits of bacon in every bite.
And then there are the classics. You can't forget about green onions and sour cream. They add some freshness and that tangy creaminess that goes so well with the cheese and bacon.
They're like the finishing touches. They make everything look and taste even better. A little bit of green onion for some color and that oniony flavor. And then a dollop of sour cream to cut through all the richness.
Okay, so we've got the basics down: cheese, bacon, green onions, and sour cream. But now it's time to get creative. This guide has some really interesting ideas for topping combinations.
This is where you can really let your personality shine, make those potato skins your own. The guide suggests things like pulled pork, BBQ, chicken, even chili if you want something really hearty.
That pulled pork idea sounds incredible. Imagine that tender, smoky pulled pork piled high on top of a crispy potato skin. It's like a whole BBQ meal in one bite.
And the BBQ chicken sounds good too. Juicy chicken with tangy BBQ sauce on top of melty cheese and a crispy potato skin. So many flavors all working together.
Okay, now I'm really hungry. And those are just a few ideas. There are so many other things you could try. We could even try some global flavors, like salsa and guacamole, or maybe Greek yogurt and feta cheese for a Mediterranean vibe.
The possibilities are endless. Don't be afraid to experiment.
Right.
Try different flavors and textures. Think about adding some acidity, some heat, some sweetness, maybe some crunch. You can really create a whole experience with these potato skins.
That's what I love about them. They're so versatile. You can make them for any occasion, any taste. You can have them as an appetizer, a snack, even a whole meal.
Exactly. And remember what we said earlier about presentation. The guide says it's important to make those potato skins look good, arrange them on a platter with some dipping sauces. It just makes them more appealing.
It's like we're creating a whole potato skin experience. Imagine having different dipping sauces like ranch dressing, blue cheese, maybe some spicy aioli, even some barbecue sauce.
Yeah.
And then bowls of extra toppings like cilantro and tomatoes and maybe some jalapenos for people who like it spicy.
Now you're getting it. And remember, this deep dive wasn't just about following a recipe step by step. We wanted to understand why things work the way they do.
That's right. We learned why russet potatoes are the best and why we pierce them and why that double baking method is so important for getting the perfect texture.
And now that you know all that, you're not just following instructions, you're really understanding the process. You're becoming a potato skin expert.
So as we wrap up our potato skin deep dive, we want to leave you with this one thought. Don't be afraid to try new things. Take what you've learned and use your imagination and create some potato skins that are all your own.
And the most important thing is to have fun with it. So put on your apron, grab your ingredients, and let's get cooking.
And that's a wrap on this episode of The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time. Happy cooking.